Hi, welcome back. This is Abigail, here to normalize these conversations and education about death and dying so we die better at end of life. Today we're going to be talking about something that death does in terms of our coping strategies. So let's get into it right now. I want to talk about what death does to our coping strategies because this is really important, not only to help you with just kind of end of life stuff, but also the stuff that's just as serious or just as big as things like death. For example, serious illness, other types of death, in life, whether it's an ending of a relationship or a divorce, for example, or other things, estranged relationships, things like that. And this is something I learned from a very highly skilled clinical counselor that was head of our clinical counseling services when I worked in hospice and palliative care for quite some time. And what she said was that death magnifies coping mechanisms. So death, and the stuff around it really does put a spotlight. And this is not what she said. I'm hopefully interpreting it correctly, but we talked about it quite a bit. But death really does death and the stuff around it puts a spotlight on our coping mechanisms and how well we cope or not in certain circumstances. So what does this mean for you? Well, when you're ultimately going to be dealing with death at some point, whether it's, with your own serious illness and your own mortality, which is always possible at any moment, right? Or the mortality of somebody else, or the ending of, like I said, of a relationship, or an ending of a career, something like that, the death of something. It doesn't just have to mean a physical death of somebody or a pet or a body. It could mean a death, an ending of a phase of your life, an ending of, like I said, a career, like with retirement, things like that. And how our coping mechanisms show up is really interesting. So during these types of challenging times, the best, the worst come out. So if people have these unhealthy coping mechanisms, those are just magnified in just ridiculous amounts when it comes to a challenging situation. So if somebody copes by avoidance, for example, they are going to, default to their normal, usual strategies of, default of avoidance. And that could mean just avoiding the reality of the change altogether, the death of whatever it is, or avoiding the other people around them that are trying to give them comfort, and avoiding the need and proper ways to actually move through, process, and actually heal from it. I'm not saying that by any time that, if there's certain times where you have to, yes, put your feelings, put the situation on pause for a moment, because either you are in a situation where it's not warranted, where say you're in the middle of a work meeting, and you can't excuse yourself right away, you got to take care of one thing. You're not going to go full blown into a processing, healing moment right away. Now, it also depends on where you work. Some workplaces are really supportive and they are very open and willing to have you, share what you need to share at whatever level you need to share it. And that's really beautiful. That's lovely. But there are certain situations where, that's not really welcome, not really warranted, and I'm more thinking about you and putting you more at risk and making you vulnerable in a situation where you might not get the right feedback or support that you deserve. So you really want to make sure that you are in a certain environment that's really going to support you as you're experiencing what you're experiencing and trying to cope with what you're trying to cope with. So all of this to, again, just say kind of what we talked about before, which is really essential, that we learn how to deal with our stuff now, because things will inevitably be just a little bit more complicated, challenging. We're going to be dealing with the death of things, obviously the death of people, our pets, our loved ones, whatever, but also the death of other things, circumstances and situationships and all that kind of stuff. So do yourself a favor, figure out a way to learn how to cope. If you want me to go into this a little bit more, I can. There'll have to be like kind of a little part series on it. And it does involve processing and moving through certain emotions, and also knowing when to take a break and pausing when you need to take a break, because it's okay to do that. You don't have to think like you have to figure it all out in a week, a month, or even a year. Our healing is in stages, and I definitely know that. I've been learning that for a while sometime, and that's okay. That's really healthy. It's okay. And you do what you can do, and you do what's best for you. All right. Thank you so much for joining in. My name is Abigail, here to normalize these conversations and educate about death and dying so we die better at end of life and, live a good life until we get there. I will see you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in.